Hello everyone, I'm Woman International Master Knarik and I'm using the chesswithknarik.com website to record this video. And I would also like to share that we are publishing now a new platform which is called chess.ie, and you can check it out and see all the features in it that are being developed. So today in this video what we are doing is we are going to see the concept of fortress. A fortress is an endgame technique that we can use, an endgame strategy that we can use when, for example, if we have less pieces, we can try to reach some positions that we know that if we reach these positions, our opponent cannot win these positions. So even though we have less material, but we will be able to draw in such positions. On the other hand, if we are aware of these fortresses, if we have the side that has the material advantage, we will try to avoid reaching those fortresses. So here comes a very important point that we need to study endgames, and we need sometimes to remember some positions, and they can help us. For example, if we're in a bad position, they can help us to go into a fortress and draw an endgame, while if we have an advantage, we can suddenly find ourselves um, in a position where we can't improve our position and win because our opponent is in a fortress and we were not aware that that was going to be a fortress. So if we look at this position, we can clearly see that white has an extra knight and a pawn. And here it's white's turn. And it matters a lot what white will play in this position. For example, if white here, because black's threat is simple. Let's say if we just play a normal king move, black is simply going to capture our knight, and black is still in the square of the passed pawn, which means that black can also capture the pawn that we have, and that's going to end in a draw. So going back, what should we play here? It should either be a pawn move or a knight move. So let's see, if we just simply push our pawn, because we can see this is very tricky. If black is capturing our knight, yes, we are promoting, it's true, and winning the game. But if we go back, of course, black does not have to capture our knight in this position. If we push the pawn, black can simply try to avoid you promoting by playing the move king to b7. And now black will be in a fortress, and no matter how much we try with white, we won't be able to win this game, because all black is going to do is just play king a8, king b7, king a8, king b7. And in this time, what can we play? We cannot move our knight because we will lose the pawn on a7. We cannot push the pawn because once that pawn is captured, it's insufficient material. Only with one knight, it's a draw as well. And our other option is, of course, we might say that we can get the king closer, try to win like that, but how close can our king really get? For example, if we try to get close from, let's say, the c file, that's stalemate. Okay, if we don't get close with our king from the c file, maybe we try to move closer from the b file. But then again, if the black king is only playing a8, b7, a8, b7, now we can't get closer here, neither from a6 nor b6. And if our king can get closer, what else can white play here? They will just move around with the king away from our king, and there is no way that white can improve this position. So being aware that having this position is going to be a fortress for black, we can try to avoid it as white. So what should we play instead? Instead of pushing the pawn to a7, we should play the knight to b4, for example. And here, our pawn is not on the 7th rank, so there is no such risk of having stalemate. So it's true, black can also try to play king b6, king a7, king b6, king a7, but we can here bit by bit get closer. Of course, the black king cannot, let's say, leave the square of the white passed pawn and try to attack the knight. That cannot be because the pawn is going to push. So going back, the black is just, let's say, playing a7, b6, and in this time, our king is getting closer. We have all the time to wait for the black king to move away and get closer. And here there's no risk of any stalemate because the black king does have moves to do. And there we go. We can just play king to b6, and next we are definitely winning this endgame with an extra knight and an extra pawn. Of course, not by pushing the pawn, because if we push the pawn to a7, this is going to be a stalemate here. And going back, what we should do first is, of course, try to control with our knight the a8 square, and after the a8 square is controlled, we can push the pawn without worrying, because after king a8, it's going to be checkmate, while if black doesn't move the king to a8, instead moves to c8, we're also very happy because we're promoting to a queen and winning this game with an extra queen and knight, of course. So, knowing this now about this position, that this pawn, when it's pushed and we have a pawn that's a rook pawn on a 7th rank and the knight is protecting it from the back, let's say whether it's from c6 or b5, that is a fortress for black, and black will be able to draw this game no matter how much we try with white. So that's a position that as white we should try to avoid, while as black we should try to reach. Now, let's see another position and let's try to understand how we can use this knowledge of this specific fortress, for example, in our games. So, if we look at this position, we can see that black has an extra pawn that's on h3 and is going to promote in 2 moves. And black also is attacking our bishop, and it's not easy for us to keep this bishop, because if we just move the bishop away, what's going to happen? Black is simply pushing the pawn and nothing stops this pawn from promoting. It's true that we said that if the pawn is pushed on to the 7th rank on a rook file and protected by a knight from behind, that's going to be a fortress for us, but it's going to be a fortress if our king is close. If our king is so far, that's not going to be a fortress, and we're going to lose the game by black promoting. So going back, moving away the bishop is not working, which means that we're also losing our bishop. So we know that we're going to have a knight and a pawn down in this position. We're going to lose that bishop. Now, so we need to find the best way to lose this bishop so that we try to reach the fortress that we saw before. So what are the different options that we have? Of course, there are some moves that pop up to our minds. For example, definitely I want to try moving my king closer, so that when the knight captures, I try to go to the fortress position by getting my king closer to the edge. And let's try that. What if I move my king to e2? Black is surely going to capture our bishop, or else what else black going to play? We can just capture the knight and we're fine. It's going to be a draw again. Here, we're getting close again. And did we manage to reach the fortress? For example, here, if black pushes the pawn to h2 and we get closer, the only way that black can protect this pawn is by moving to f3, and we already saw this position. Yes, this is a fortress. We can just move to h1 g2, h1 g2. When the black king comes closer, that's going to be a stalemate, and otherwise black has nothing. But let's see this again. But if we play this move and black captures our bishop with a check and we get closer, black doesn't have to push this pawn to h2 and reach the position that's a fortress for white. They can try to avoid this. So what can black play here to avoid the fortress and win the game? There's a very good move here, which is, again, of course, not, let's say, moving the king closer, because we can just capture the knight. And even if the black king could get to protect the pawn that's on the h file, that's a rook pawn. It's just going to be a draw if our king is here in the corner. So what's the winning move here for black? It is moving the knight to e2. By moving the knight to e2, now it's like black has created a wall here with the help of the knight and the pawn. And our king can't get closer to that black pawn. And of course, our king can't get closer by moving from, let's say, f3 and then g4 from the back, because once we're in the back, the pawn is going to push. We're going to be out of the square of the passed pawn. So all white can do here is just wait, just play these useless moves here and wait. Meanwhile, black has all the time to just get closer and closer in this position. And let's see here. Let's say even in this position, black can just wait for our king to move away. And now our king needs to move away and at this point either capture the knight or move away to e1. And in both cases, we will be getting out of the square of the black pass pawn, and the black pass pawn is going to be pushed and promoted, and black is going to win. So let's go back to the initial position. So instinctively getting the king closer didn't really help because black had that special move which was knight to e2. Now, but what else can we try? If we wanted to try to get closer to the edge and try to go to the force black to go to the fortress position that we know, what's another a move that we can play? We can try also moving our bishop to h2. By moving the bishop to h2, let's see, again, black must capture this bishop, otherwise we can just keep the bishop on this diagonal anytime we want. When the pawn is pushed to h2, sacrifice our bishop for that pawn, or just get the king closer and reach the same position anyways. So here definitely black is capturing, and we are getting closer now with our king. Let's see, what can black play here? If black is just getting the king closer, we can also get our king closer, and our next move is just going to be king to g6, which is either going to force black to lose one of those pieces if they leave the pieces as they are, or if they move away the knight, we can just get closer, and now black is forced to push this pawn because there's no other way that they can keep it. Knight to f2 doesn't work. We can just capture it. We're still in the square of the pass pawn. And pushing this is going to result in a fortress. We can simply move to g2 now and then play h1 g2, h1 g2 all the time, and that was a fortress. We already saw that before. So going back here, after capturing our knight and getting closer with our king, king to f2. So let's see, let's go back. King to e2. So what if black doesn't get the king closer but tries something else? Maybe black tries to move away the knight from now, but it's the same for us. We get closer by moving to f3, and our next threat is going to be moving our king to g3. And once we move the king to g3, again, we're gonna be forcing the pawn to push to the h2 square, and we will be in our fortress. And let's say we can see this again, and when we're getting closer, this is a fortress. Otherwise, what does black have here in this position? What can black play? No matter what, we're gonna get closer and attack that pawn and force it to be pushed. Of course, our threat is not capturing the knight because then we'll be getting out of the square of the passed pawn and we will be losing. So in this position, we managed to force our opponent to move to a fortress, to move to a position that is a fortress for us. And there we are. We just keep the king on h1, h2. I just want to show one more thing, that even till the last moment, we should be very careful with the moves we make, because any small mistake can cost us the game. For example, if instead of playing king to e2 here with white, we had played king to e1, we might say, yeah, so what? We're just getting the king closer. What does it matter if I'm moving to e2 or e1? But it does matter for sure. How does it matter here? That, of course, black doesn't have to move the king here, but instead they can avoid the fortress by checking our king and just simply moving to the g5 square, protecting the pawn while it's on the 6th rank. And we already saw that if the pawn isn't pushed to the 7th rank and is, okay, in this case, the 2nd rank, and is protected by the knight from behind, this is definitely winning for black. We could see that black could easily get the king closer and eventually promote and win this game with the black pieces.